Hello.
Hello.
Today we will be looking at pedagogy of reading, and our focus will be on shared reading. In today's lesson, we will be looking at what is shared reading and how to use shared reading in your classes, and resources for shared reading, and organizing shared reading using a big book. So, shared reading is generally effective with beginning readers in any language, and also readers who struggle to make meaning of the written word. So, if you look at the slide, the teacher encourages children to follow the text that she reads aloud and lets them repeat after her or read in chorus. And it can be used with an entire class, or it can be used in small groups as well, or even in large group. In terms of organizing shared reading, before you start the session, you have to select a suitable story and identify the teaching points in the story. The teaching points could include sentence structures, phonics, subject-verb agreement, using context to find meanings of words, or even reading with feeling if you are using a poem. These are few of the examples of teaching points that you could use. During the session, that is when you are conducting shared reading, you have to ensure that every child has a written copy of the story being read, and you have to read aloud and have children follow it in their own text, and you have to model the reading strategies that you expect the children to pick up. After you finish the shared reading, you will be engaging children in discussions based on the teaching points that you have identified earlier, and you will help individual children who have not been able to cope during the shared reading. There would be some who would not be able to follow the text you have been reading. So, such children, after the shared reading session, you will be helping them. As I told you earlier, shared reading can be done for the whole class or in small groups, and if you plan to engage small groups in shared reading, then you need to plan the activities beforehand in terms of how are you going to engage the different groups, and the time that you spend with each group. This also you need to plan out earlier. In case you have fluent readers in your class, then you can assign one of them to each group, and after giving them clear instructions, they can engage the group in shared reading, and you could monitor all the groups together. Now, in terms of uses of shared reading, it helps connect children through shared feelings and experiences. It helps children make meaning of the text together, and it definitely helps engage children and ensure their participation in the reading process. And remember, reading is to make meaning and not just to decode the text. Now, let us look at some of the resources that can be used for shared reading. These include big books. We will be seeing a demo of a big book shortly. Reading cards. You must have seen reading cards. IFLU itself has come out with a set of good reading cards. And audio books or talking books are another set of resources, and these are readily available in the market. And of course, the prescribed school textbook itself. And this could be the language textbook, or it could even be your subject textbook, science or the social science textbook. Now, I will be showing a short video clip wherein a teacher is demonstrating the use of big book for shared reading session. As you watch the video, please make a note of the change in intonations that the teacher brings in. List out the questions that the teacher asks and the instructions given during the reading session, and definitely see how the big book looks, where the teacher places it while she is reading it, and in what way does she ensure all children are looking at the big book when she is reading aloud, and make a note of the questions and instructions that she gives and what the children are doing as the teacher is reading aloud. Shall we look at the video clipping now?
Yes, ma'am. All of you, can you see this? Yes. This is a big book. Now I'll read the story, you just listen. Once there was a man who used to sell caps. He carried the caps in a big basket. Now, where is the word caps? Can you identify this one? No. This one? No. This one? Yes. Okay, will anybody say what is this? Big. Yes. Big. Raise your hands. Yes, you say.
Big.
Very good. What is this? Yes, you.
Basket.
Very good. Shall we go to the next part of the story? He became tired. He saw a big banyan tree. Can anybody say where is the word dance?
Miss.
Yes. Come on, show the word dance. Yes, spell the word.
D-A-N-C-E.
Tell the word.
Dance.
Dance. How do you dance? Yes, good. Can you say what word is this? Yes, you?
B-A-C-K. Big.
Huh? Can anybody help him? Come on. What is this?
Bag.
Bag. Come on, say what is this?
Can you tell me what you just observed? Yes.
The teacher is making the students to pronounce correctly using phonics, sounds, and also she is trying to get the spellings of the words, and she is also testing testing the student whether he is capable of telling that word, show that word also.
So where do you think the focus is on? Is she only trying to make the children tell out the spelling of the word or associate the sound with the word?
No, also the meaning. Meaning of the word.
So where exactly do you feel that she is asking students to tell the meaning of the word as well?
Firstly, she's asked them, can you identify where the dance is in the book? And she asked them to read it out. Then she said, do you know what dance is? Then she said, can you dance? So by this we understand that she's also trying to make them understand the meaning of the word.
Okay, now shall we look at how to make a big book?
Yes.
So obviously you have to select the story you want to help children read. So this story can either be from the text. If you feel the text is too high for the level of the children, then you can simplify the story and present it in the form of a big book. Or if you want children to read a story that is other than what is there in the textbook, then you can select the big book for use. After selecting the story, you have to break the story into chunks of 2 or 3 sentences. It is important that in each page of the big book, not more than 2, maximum 3 sentences are written, because the size of the font has to be big so as to be visible for the entire class. You can write these sentences in chart paper or on the back side of a wall calendar, the plain side of the wall calendar. Then you illustrate each sheet appropriately. You can also stick pictures or ask children themselves to draw appropriate pictures related to the story. And you can design an attractive cover page and then pin and tie all the sheets along with the cover page. You've already seen a short video clipping of how to use a big book. A big book can be used for group reading, either in small group or in a large group. In case it is a new text and children are not very familiar with the text, then big book can be used for the entire class. And if the children are slightly familiar with the text, then big book can be used in smaller groups. But whether you use it in a small group or a large group, it is absolutely important that as a teacher you ask questions to ensure that children are understanding the meaning of the text. As I told you earlier, shared reading is primarily for meaning making and not just decoding the text. If you recollect in the video that you saw earlier, the teacher first read aloud the story so children could enjoy it. The story was not part of their text, it was for additional reading.
This is a big book. Now I'll read the story, you just listen. Once there was a man who used to sell caps. He carried the caps in a big basket.
And in the second round, one of her teaching points was introducing vocabulary. So she pointed out to the words and ensured children could read the words and understand the meaning of the words.
Where is the word caps? Can you identify this one? No. This one? No. This one?
Yes.
And in the third round, she allowed children to join in with her, which became choral reading. Now, the purpose of any pedagogy of reading is primarily to make children independent readers. Therefore, keeping storybooks or old children's magazines and the supplements for children from newspapers or the big books that you use as a resource in your class, all these can be set aside as a reading corner within the classroom itself. And such resources which are simple to collect and certainly simple to make will go a long way in cultivating the culture of reading in our classrooms.
Ma'am, can you please tell us how can this big book be used in a classroom with larger group?
Thank you for asking this question, because it's important to know how you seat the children in a large group. It would be best to seat them in a semicircle and use it a little away from the children so that they can see the big book clearly. And in case you have furniture in your classroom, then it will be a little difficult to manage a semicircular formation, in which case I suggest that you take the children out to the playground. It would be easier, or you could move the furniture a little to the wall of the class, and it is important that you ensure children are seated in a semicircle so as to be able to see the big book clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I would like to ask how to organize a session with a smaller group with the big book, ma'am. How do we organize it?
There are two aspects to organizing use of big book in smaller groups. One, of course, is to plan out activities in terms of what each group will be doing, and secondly, you will have to ensure that each group has their own copy of big book. It could be either the same story and each group is looking at different aspects of the story, or it could be different stories according to the reading level. So, the grouping can be made either based on the ability of the children. So, same reading level ability children can be formed into one group and given a different set of big book, and children who are at a different reading level can be given a different big book. So, the preparation is one aspect of it, where you need to plan the activities and you need to plan how are you going to group the children. Is it going to be mixed ability or the same ability, and depending on that whether you are going to give them multiple big books or the same copy of the big book, but ensure that each group has a copy. And when it actually comes to organizing the class, you have to have certain techniques for grouping children. If children are not used to forming small groups, it can be a little challenging, but once you get them used to forming groups, then that process becomes quite simple. So, numbering is one technique that you could use to group children, or you could pre-assign them to groups, or another way of grouping is children who are seated close to each other can form a group. After you form the group and distribute the resources, you have to ensure that you go around the groups and each group is attending to the task that you have laid out to them. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You have seen the video demonstration of the use of Big Book, and you have also seen the instructions for using the Big Book. Can one of you tell me how will you convert a school text into a Big Book?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for asking us the same question, which you have already told us. You have already mentioned us the making of a big book. In that, you have told break the sentences, longer sentences into chunks. So, in this, we need to make the complicated sentences which are in the textbook and break them into a simpler form so that the student can understand it clearly. And we can also paste a picture so that that would be easily understood by the students.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. My question is, to which age group this big book would be more useful?
If you recollect, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation itself, Big Book is best suited for children who are beginning to read in any language. So, it could be their mother tongue that they are beginning to read in the initial stages. It could be English when they are just introduced to the language, or it could be Hindi which they are learning as a third language, or any other language. I mentioned Hindi because in southern states Hindi is introduced as a third language in class 5 or 6. So, depending on which language they are learning at which stage. So, for beginning readers, Big Book is a useful resource. And also there are some children who struggle to make meaning out of the written text. For such children also Big Book is useful. So, in an entire class, if you have say 3 or 4 children who are struggling, so you could have a Big Book prepared for those group of children alone. So, they are not left behind in the class.
Ma'am, my question is, how can we help students with disabilities with this Big Book, ma'am?
That's a very interesting question. Thank you for asking it. Again, there are 3 or 4 aspects that need to be kept in mind. If you have children in your class with physical disability, for example, partial visual impairment, then making the font size big itself is quite helpful for the child, and make sure that the child sits close to the Big Book as you are reading aloud. If you have a child with hearing impairment in your class, then ensure that the child sits in front of you, so that he or she can read the lip movement as you are reading aloud from the book. And children with learning disabilities, again Big Book will help repetition. So, you can use this resource repeatedly for those children to read and make meaning out of. Thank you.